What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I got a bunch of stuff to bring to your awareness, to your attention. Most importantly, is consciously using energy. And what I mean by that is so many times we unconsciously let our old programming and these old mindsets just run on autopilot. You have some event that happens during the day, and a lot of times you can go to worst case scenario thinking, what if, fear based thinking and reactivity, and that is just automatically seeming to operate. It just runs in the background, almost just like on autopilot. And what I'm talking about, today is more consciously using this energy instead of creating the undesirable. Start moving in a direction where you start to experience more and more desirable outcomes, more desirable states of consciousness. And to do that, you start to really observe your thoughts and your mindset when there's some reactivity, or you start feeling drained of energy. Whatever that is. Maybe you got an argument with your spouse, and next thing you know, you're telling yourself the same old story about them, how they're just like, oh, they don't care, and they got other things going on that are whatever you're telling yourself about it. It's like, start realizing more and more so that those stories are manifesting either unconsciously in this negative behavior or this reactivity that something they're doing is bothering you, that's draining you. And catch that mental narrative that's going on, because it tells on itself of what you are actually believing in consciousness. Because we're moving more in a direction of faith, and this is already showing you what unconsciously your faith is, and so if you're unconsciously, worst case scenario thinking, oh, they're out to get me, oh, they're trying to manipulate me, oh, they're trying to, there's a power struggle, whatever the narrative is, you start realizing and connecting the dots that is creating that scenario, if anything, in your own mind, which is, where you're experiencing all these things. You start telling yourself these stories that's draining. You're using the only energy that is real. There's only love, but you can use it either to curse or to bless, either for good or for, not so good, and it's more so, not really that kind of polarity. It's more of a, is this serving me to have this manifest? Because it's going to manifest regardless. It's either going to manifest in the undesirable, and kind of based on your identity of separation, which we all have that. That's the starting spot. Not to feel guilty or whatever that you have like an ego or a sense of self that's a brain and a body. Ultimately that's an illusion, because we're all connected and everything's connected in consciousness. So a lot of the stories and the narratives that are based on that separation mindset, that you're separate from the event, separate from the person acting that way, separate, it's like, oh, I'm taking no responsibility at all for whatever's playing out in the here and now, which is life, which is the only time that's real, is now. And so it's like you start to see the actual faith that you have, and so much of like fear is just faith in two powers. Faith that there's God, and then there's some threat that's like actually can challenge God. A lot of those beliefs are limiting beliefs, limiting assumptions, and it goes into the next stage of using this energy, which is letting go of those old stories and narratives, letting go of those beliefs that aren't serving you, that aren't reflective of consciousness, because all things exist, and you can focus your attention, which when you look at your attention as a kind of almost like, your attention is like a hose. The energy just flows regardless. So if you're watering seeds of like the undesirable, it's more separation, more fear, and you're putting your attention on that, then that energy's flowing to that, and it's actually creating more of the undesirable that you actually don't want to be experiencing. So it's coming to terms with, there's one power, there's one energy, there's only one God, and how you're, putting your attention has a big impact on the mirror of reality that's constantly showing you your relationship with God and who you believe yourself to be in relationship with that. And it's all automatic and impersonal. So it's like, do you really want to keep creating more fear, hysteria, more boogeymen to react to? You can. You can consciously use your energy to do that if that's what you want. What I'm talking about is more so catching the unconscious patterns and making them conscious, and then choosing, do you want to carry that on with your new identity in Christ, or do you want to let that go and just, you don't have to sit and destroy it. You don't have to like condemn it. You don't have to battle and resist it, because even in battling and resisting it, you're using that energy to create an opponent to battle and resist against. And it's all based on your faith, on how powerful you want to make that adversary. Do you want to continuously have this adversary you're battling and fighting against? Giving your energy to it, feeling reactive to it, or do you want to start to move in a direction of the kingdom of God, where God's in control of everything? Because that's the actual reality. I mean, that's what is actually happening. Everything is in creation in the here and now is working under a set of law, and it's something you can observe as you change your mental activity and become more conscious in how you decide to think about a thing, versus just letting some unconscious script that is just running in the background. Maybe your parents taught it to you, and maybe that belief is serving. Maybe that serves you, that particular belief. Maybe your family was really abundance conscious for example, if you're really abundance conscious, and things start becoming more flow based, and things just start to work out, and things are just synchronistically happening because of that belief that you were basically inherited from your parents, then great, but if you were born into an environment where there's a lot of scarcity thinking, money's impossible to make, it's so difficult and challenging, it's so scarce and hard to do, these limitations and these bullshit beliefs, that's not actually real. Those are the ones that you can go, hey, I'm thinking this way. Is that how I actually want my experience of creation to be? Or is it better to replace that with the truth of what God says to be real? And you can look in two different ways. You can, look through the Bible, but you can also look within yourself and start to develop that relationship with your Creator and be led to the correct understanding that actually is serving. And the problem and the solution come at the same time. The problem and the solution come in whether you believe that thought that's in error, or you don't believe that thought and ask God for a different thought. What is this in terms of like a divine thought? What does this mean in terms of oneness and connectivity and unity? These are all things to start to put together in your here and now, to start creating more heaven in your life and the people around you, versus unconsciously letting your old identity of fear and separation create more and more hell for yourself, and experiencing torment as a result of that. That's your choice. You can do whatever you want, but it's it gets to a point where it's like you're just choosing to inflict suffering upon yourself because that's what you want for some reason. It doesn't mean that that's what your Creator wants for you. I mean, it's like we're supposed to start looking at things in the physical and understanding more and more so the spiritual kind of symbolic relationship. If you start to look at everything in creation as like a symbol, as a word, as something has a component in consciousness that makes sense, that's spiritually discerned, as a way to think of that, you can start to move in a different direction, and you can start to become more and more mindful and aware of that connection in the present moment, and listen to the stories that you're telling yourself about your day. Is it filled with us versus them kind of thinking. Ultimately fear is the big red flag with this old mindset, and so, but there's many flavors of fear, and sometimes fear can be hidden in anger, but you really got to get to the bottom of why you're angry about something. It's like, are you angry because it's like, you feel like there's some injustice, there's some loss, or, anything, that has to do with fear and love. It's only the one energy being used two different ways from different perspective, so it's like, when it comes to, the fear of like maybe loss or something, it's like, oh, I can get angry and battle and fight against, whoever this injustice is or whatever. Most of the time, your own thoughts will give away what you believe, unconsciously, where you put your faith in. But, you start changing that, in that moment. I ask, what would Jesus do? What was the Spirit do? What is real? What is true? And boom, just like that, you might have a couple layers of mental programming and conditioning that'll start to bubble to your surface of your consciousness, but go deeper, go do it 4 or 5 times, it's like, yeah, that's still, an old program running. Oh, still an old program running, and keep going until finally you're out of these what ifs and worst case scenarios, and you're open to receiving something from infinite intelligence that will help guide you to the correct understanding. And by correct, I mean the understanding that in your soul you feel it resonates. It's like, you just know. It's one of those things, it's like God's already given you like all the tools within your own being to understand what's real, to understand what's perfect and true. It's within you, and it's like, you already know it. It's like, part of like, I feel like moving forward is getting out of like these middlemen. It's like, oh, this external person, they got all figured out. Getting out of that, and realizing that the Spirit within you is the teacher, and so if anybody on the outside can do anything really super helpful, I feel like that is to direct you back within your own being, to connect with your creator and consciousness, so, using, energy consciously, it's like, this is one way to do it, and this is one way to understand it, but it's by no means limited in any type of way. God can teach you how to do these in all sorts of ways that make sense perfectly for you, which might become, on the surface, totally different, but thinking in terms of energy, and in terms of, hey, I got this mental activity just running. These are all words. They all can be externalized into form. Is that what I desire to experience? If the answer is no, if you go, hey, if I was in heaven right now, would this be an awesomely heavenly experience, to be attacking this person in my mind, hoping something bad happens? And then the more that you do this, you realize that this will manifest in form. And then it's like, do you really want that to happen? Do you really want that person to be attacked or something, Because not only will you experience that, but since we're connected, you will feel that too. It becomes stupid to want to do that, because it's like, do you want to do that to yourself? Because ultimately you will experience that, because we're all connected, and you're only looking through the mirror of creation, and so, how are you going to use that energy when you could bless and, feel more of the fruits of the Spirit consciously, not letting anything outside of yourself dictate what's going on in your own consciousness. And the thing too with this energy, it's like, you're always looking at the past, so it's like, being able to see the past without being like sucked into it. Not to say it doesn't happen, I get sucked into it, just like anybody else. It's like, I go, oh, if maybe my wife or have an argument, next thing it's like, a day later, still just hard feelings, and it's like, don't want to be around that person, it's just, but it's the same thing. You check the thoughts and see what you're telling yourself, and a lot of times your feelings kind of correspond to whether you believe those thoughts or you don't believe those thoughts. If you don't believe them, they just come and go. But if you actually believe them, if you have faith in them, well, more than likely, then those will start to externalize into a form and have like a self-fulfilling prophecy attached to them. Like, it's like, oh, you start thinking negative and fighting with somebody in your mind. It won't take very long till next thing you know, you get confronted with that ideal opportunity to explode on that person, being able to, say exactly what you've been thinking about. And so many times when that happens, though, it's like by the time you express it, it doesn't feel true anymore once you say it out loud. And then now there's drama and there's conflict, now there's hurt feelings and everything else. And it's like, okay, well, how many, it's like you can keep doubling down on it, which is so much of the old mindset likes to do. It's like, well, if I just had more, then then that would have worked. If I would have just said that zinger, then it would have worked. If I would have just done this, then that would have, it's like, it's all these limiting thoughts and everything else, real kind of, I'm gonna say animalistic thoughts, but it's like a lot of like attack, scarcity, fear, hysteria, reactivity, not using logic, not using not using just what you desire, at all, and it takes a little bit of quote unquote time, to practice and try over and over. But the nice thing is everything runs in circles. It's all in loops. So there's really not failure in the sense that, oh, you're fucked and it's, nothing you can do about it. You'll always be presented with more and more opportunities to get better and better at using this energy consciously, because you're already doing it. It's not, oh, you got to learn something new. You're already doing it right now, consciously or unconsciously. The problem is so many times unconsciously we're using this energy to create hell for ourselves and others, and suffering, making other people suffer, having our energy fucking drained in the process, not creating fun, joy, peace, basically just being the embodiment of fear and satanic ideals, instead of who you actually are in Christ, which is love and joy and peace and all these attributes of the Spirit, which you can start to tap into now. It's only ever now when you do these things, and if you're not into the present moment, a lot of times you're unconsciously creating what you don't want, and it's really not even so much focusing on what you do want, because what you do want is already there after you let go of all this bullshit. It's like you naturally start to rise in consciousness when you let go of these limiting beliefs that are unconsciously using this energy to create what you don't like or don't want, and so much of what you do desire and what you don't desire, God put those desires in your heart anyway, so it's like getting more and more in harmony and alignment with who you actually are, and thinking in a way that you actually want to be thinking, with thoughts that feel good, and are actually being a good steward of the energy that God gives you, which that's within you, and it's like God gives it to you, God gets it back multiplied. So God loves giving you energy, and so and you can start to kind of do that same flow by giving to others. You can feel how then instantaneously that energy exchange is you can feel that it's almost like a coil, or it's like you have like a little bit of energy, and as you get two people that are just building it up, it comes back multiplied. So it's like it's an investment. Look at everything that you're doing with this energy as an investment, that's going to come back on you, and you can either invest it in heavenly things, or you can invest it in like hellish things. Regardless, it doesn't matter. It'll come back on you as an investment. So start using it more and more consciously. And so in using it consciously, a big part of that is just catching the unconscious shit that you're doing and just either letting it go, asking God for help to deal with it, putting something new in its place. And a lot of times you change the way you're thinking by the way you're doing, so it's like, I think conversations with God, brought that paradigm up. It's like the be, do, have paradigm or whatever, so to change your old beliefs and assumptions, you start to do something different, in the doing, and you start getting new thoughts about it, and then as you get new thoughts about it, that starts to manifest. And so a good example of that is like maybe just exercising your body. It's like you can look at your body as a state of consciousness being expressed, a word being expressed into form and into manifestation. And the things you think about your body, it's like when you're eating food, every piece of food that you're eating has a little story attached to it. If you don't believe that, go eat a fucking Big Mac or something. Go to a fast food place and listen to the little story you're telling yourself about it as you're eating it. It's like, oh, this is going to make me so fat, or this is so unhealthy, it's going to give me a heart attack. It's not, oh, this is delicious, this tastes good, this is going to give me a bunch of energy, this is awesome that it's at a decent value. And you have a story about it either way, and it's like so many times, people, have a type of food that they have these negative stories about, and in eating it, when you're telling yourself these negative things, it's like, by your faith is done unto you. And so it's like, if you believe those negative things about it, and then even on a subconscious level, it's like you can try to trick yourself by telling yourself a new story, but if deep in your self you believe that it's bad for you, that's what it is. I mean, you can't lie to yourself, and you can't lie to God about it, and so God knows what you really think. And if you get to a certain level where you're able to let those stories and those narratives go by changing your identity, and your identity surrounding that particular thing, then it's a different situation. But like but there's so many things like that. It's like there's food. You have either these like positive or these negative stories, these beliefs. A lot of those are unconscious though too. So whatever you're doing, if you're eating, oh, I'm just going to eat salads, I'm going to be super healthy. That's the story you're telling yourself as you're eating that. It's like, oh, this is going to make my skin really nice, and I'm going to be collagen and whatever. It's like that with everything. We all have these little stories that we're telling ourselves about it, and in that, we're using the only energy that exists to basically take those symbols and add an attribute to it. And in doing so, there's a correspondence. It's all about this correspondence. Where it's like your thoughts in relationship to these things produce an effect. And either that effect is helpful or it's harmful. So it's like, not to say that one is, and the thing of it is like, you don't want to get hung up on like judging and labeling, but the easiest way to start to discern is based on the own inner guidance system of whether it feels good, if it resonates with your inner being, or if it doesn't resonate with your inner being. You already know what the answer is. God's whispered it to your soul many times, and maybe it takes somebody out here, to have it click or whatever, but you already know. And the thing of it is, it's like, moving in a new direction. It's like, how can you use this energy now to connect with love, to feel like divine states of consciousness more and more so, versus drifting and unconsciously going back into the state of hell, this identity of hell. It's like, do you want to be that? It's like, I don't. I don't want that for my family and my friends and people I care about. I want them to not suffer and be tormented, and in realizing that we're all connected. Again, it's you make the inner shift on the story you're telling yourself about that person's state of consciousness. It's like you be telling yourself, oh, that person is is blessed. Look at how far they're coming. Everything's going perfect with them. God's in control of their life, and this and that. Or you could be like, telling yourself another story of like, oh, well, that person's off the rails. Shit's going bad for them. They're making bad decisions. And your thought energy, using the one energy to either curse or to bless that person, that state, and it's all about what's in your own consciousness towards them, then believing in that separateness. If you believe that you're separate from that person, that's nothing is an accident or coincidence, and every person that comes into your life at every particular moment is divinely orchestrated. Whether you want to believe that or not is on you. But, you're always looking at an aspect of what you're seeing in another exists within you, and by forgiving that in another, you actually let it go in your own self, because we're connected, and so that's another aspect of using this energy consciously, because you can use that to build another up, to actually give what you want to experience more of. If you want more peace, for example, it's like you give peace to another. And in doing so, it is an investment of energy that comes back multiplied, so you experience more and more states of peace. But ultimately, peace is being able to, I believe, be able to stand in consciousness, in awareness, and experience thoughts without being reactive to them, without believing they're real. And next thing spinning out for days and hours and weeks and months, just being pissed off about, a thought, that it's something that exists only in consciousness, in your own mind. Well, it doesn't actually, if it exists in consciousness, it exists in the physical, but, its root is in the spiritual, but yeah, I just wanted to get on here and kind of talk about that for a little bit, share that idea, try it out for yourself, see if it fits, see if it resonates, and hopefully it does, and hopefully you're able to consciously start to have a better vibe in your conscious narratives that you're telling about whatever's, and hopefully that's a benefit to you. So I think I'm about. So thanks again for liking, sharing, commenting, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your financial support. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And until the next now, God bless.